Our next speaker will be Jacques, and Maulik is going to introduce him. But do we need a 5 minutes break, or are we okay? I think we are good, right? So let's do it.
Let me introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Zachary Gabe. Zach is Senior Tech Consultant at Perficient. His goal is to bridge the gap between entry-level Sitecore developer and architect. Very nice one. He wants to make the steep learning curve of Sitecore an easier one to learn. Today, he is going to show us how you don't go crazy with Sitecore updates. That's an important one. Thanks. Zach.
All right. I will share my screen. All right, let me move out this. All right. So, Mike already introduced me. I'm Zach. I've been with Perficient just over 4 years now. And in that time, I have completed 2 Sitecore upgrades from Sitecore 8 to 9. And I think the word I'm going to go for to describe them was fun. So this presentation is going to go into detail on what all is involved with these upgrades, lessons learned in each step, and provide some architectural recommendations to make future upgrades easier. Disclaimer, I have not personally upgraded a solution from a non-containerized setup to one that does have containers. However, most of these things still apply. There's just some differences that you have to make that are container specific that I won't go into on this presentation. But afterwards, feel free to speak up on your own upgrade experiences. I think something that makes upgrades sometimes painful is that everyone's solution is unique, and then it provides different upgrade paths. So without further ado, let's just move on to the first slide and talk about why someone would even consider upgrading. So first off, Sitecore support for older versions ends eventually. An important perk you will want to keep alive is the ability to open support tickets in times of need. So as you can see here in this screenshot, mainstream support lasts for 3 years post-release. The level of support decreases as time goes on. So keeping your Sitecore site up to date with the latest version of Sitecore makes it possible for Sitecore to fully support you to the best of their ability. So also, something that's very nice is that new versions of Sitecore comes with, believe it or not, new features. And these new features may be beneficial for you. We're going back in time here, but for example, Sitecore 9 comes with Sitecore Forms, very easy drag and drop tool for form creation. Content authors don't even need developer assistance to make these simple forms. Newer versions of Sitecore come with out-of-the-box support for external authentication, like Azure AD, and that's nice. You don't want to have to manage user accounts in both whatever directory that houses their company accounts plus manage Sitecore accounts. You can just do this role mapping directly from the external authenticator into a Sitecore virtual user. So let's see what else. Optimization for cloud. If you're on a very old version of Sitecore, you know this. Moving to newer versions brings with it the support for being able to do things such as blue-green deployments. No one likes to stick around in the middle of the night for something to fail. You get this guaranteed uptime by using Azure. But flashy features aside, you also get support for things that make your developers happy. So newer versions of Sitecore support JSS. So if your developers are more JavaScript gurus rather than full stack .NET devs, maybe upgrading to Sitecore is a good idea for you, because then your devs are happy. And if your devs are happy, I don't think anyone cares if the devs are happy. They'll just keep working, I think. So let's move on to the first phase I want to talk about in a Sitecore upgrade, which is database upgrades. Sitecore provides documentation on how to upgrade to each version. You simply just have to navigate to the Sitecore downloads page for the version you are upgrading to. So if you see here in the screenshot on the right, the instructions for upgrading to Sitecore 9.3 are seen there. I have it perfectly squared off. Important note, you don't go to the Sitecore downloads page for the current version of Sitecore you are on. You need to go to the version you are upgrading to find the proper instructions. The more versions of Sitecore you upgrade past, the more likely you'll have to perform multiple database upgrades. For example, if you're upgrading from Sitecore 7 to Sitecore 10, you will likely have some intermediate version you have to jump to before you get to 10. If you're upgrading from Sitecore 8.1.3 to, say, Sitecore 9.2, you only have to jump one hoop. You just go straight from that old version to the new one. One set of instructions is a straight shot. To get some practice with the upgrade process, I recommend doing a dry run on your local machine. Install a fresh instance of the Sitecore version you are currently on, and then run through the upgrade instructions. The upgrade instructions are kind of like a choose your own adventure novel, in my opinion. So I like to write down the exact steps I take so I don't have to go back and read the instructions again as I'm doing the official upgrade. When you do this dry run on your local machine, be sure to install Sitecore to a very short file path, because the upgrade tool can make really long file path names briefly, and Windows doesn't like that. So it would error out. Also, another fun tip, I cannot stress this enough, do not run the upgrade process on an Azure hosted database. I found it to be very painfully slow. You'll want to pull down a copy of the database and then upgrade it. And this brings me to my next point. Don't do in-place upgrades. What do I mean by that? I mean, running the upgrade steps on the databases currently in use. If the upgrade process fails, then your site's going to go down. If you do this in a production environment, then you're going to be losing your online presence and potentially revenue at that point. So I recommend standing up separate servers and databases specifically for upgrading. After the upgrade is complete, flip the switch, point all your internet traffic to your new servers, and then you're good to go. But then, how do you get your custom templates, your custom items, all of that stuff up into an Azure hosted database, or however you are hosting it? I recommend taking one of two routes to solving this problem. Route 1 involves using packages, Sitecore Sidekick, and PowerShell to move content from the currently in-use environment and moving it to your separate servers. However, this can be somewhat error-prone, because if you miss an item, you may not notice it until content authors are like, what's going on? Why can't I see this on my page? So be wary of that. Route 2 is pointing your separate server to a copy of your database and then upgrading your copy using the upgrade process Sitecore provides. This will ensure you're not skipping any custom content whatsoever, because you're running the whole upgrade process there. In my opinion, Route 1's faster. I also personally like Route 1 more, just because in Route 1, you're moving this content over to the databases that are already using the latest version of Sitecore. So you're not going to move the content over and then upgrade from there, because that would just be kind of like Route 2. You would be So if you're on 8.1.3 and you're going to 9.3, the separate server starts on databases set up for 9.3, and then you move your content over to those fresh databases. So that's why I like Route 1 more, but Route 2 is acceptable too. The next phase I want to talk about is Sitecore config patching. What you're going to want to do is move all custom settings in the Sitecore config file into patch files. So my recommendation here is to download a text compare tool, kind of like Beyond Compare, for example. And after that, you will download the old version Sitecore config, the vanilla unaltered Sitecore config, and do a text compare with what's in the show config page on the in the production environment, for example. Then you can find the differences, and then after that, you take those differences and just place it in one giant patch file. That way you have all the settings in one place. You know what's different from vanilla Sitecore, and you can kind of debug issues. So if you run into an issue with a setting, you can take it out and see if for sure that is the setting causing issues. After that, though, I wouldn't want to leave just one giant large patch file. I feel like that's a little gross. You may want to separate out the patch files to the correct location in your solution, wherever you want to put them. But in my experience, if you're a consultant on a upgrade project, your goal is just to get through the upgrade process as fast as possible and get things done. You may want to save separating out this large patch file into smaller patch files post upgrade if you want to. That's no biggie. The next phase is dependency injection changes. Stop using third-party tools like Castle Windsor and Simple Injector. You're going to want to use .NET's dependency injection tool. It's very easy to use. I personally like it more than these third-party tools. Microsoft provides tons of documentation on how to inject various services into your code. Very user-friendly, very easy to read and follow along. So we won't spend too much time here. It's just move away from third-party tools and use .NET's offerings. This slide is very dry. It looks very dry, but there's a lot of information here that I want to go into more than just these points. So you're going to have to do a lot of code updates. First, you'll need to update the .NET target framework of your projects to the appropriate version. Sitecore provides a compatibility table, so you can see, oh, Sitecore 10.1, I need .NET framework 4.8, I think, off the top of my head. So after updating that setting, then you will want to connect to the Sitecore NuGet feed and uninstall the current Sitecore NuGet packages. After that, you'll install the new Sitecore NuGet packages using the version that is compatible with the version of Sitecore you're upgrading to. That's a mouthful. After upgrading these NuGet references, you will then need to peruse through your code in each of your projects, and you'll need to make sure that your Sitecore API calls and implementations are still supported by the newer version of Sitecore. If not, you will need to adjust your code accordingly for your site to function like it did in the older version. I would also take the time here to make sure there's no one that was really sneaky and installed older versions of Sitecore not with the NuGet feed, and they just added the dependency old school style and just snuck it in there. I've had some issues where I've deployed code and all my projects looked like they were using the correct NuGet package, but one project that wasn't listed as using the Sitecore NuGet package actually was deploying the old version of Sitecore, Sitecore.kernel and stuff like that. So just be wary of that. Make sure you go through and then remove those old dependencies and then make sure they're all using the NuGet feed. You'll then need to follow almost the exact same steps that I just described for non-Sitecore dependencies. Go through the NuGet feed, uninstall the old version, install the latest version that is compatible with the .NET version that you're on, or moving to, actually. But after that, you're going to find that some of these dependencies that you're needing to upgrade, some of these third-party dependencies, they don't have a NuGet package that is compatible with the new version of Sitecore that you're going to. So what do? You have a few options. Some of them are bad options. I think you'll know them as I'm saying them. You can wait to do your upgrade process until the NuGet package is available. However, this may never come if that dependency is no longer being maintained. So even if it is being maintained, it may not even be available in the time you were given to complete the upgrade. So this leaves you with two other options. You have the option to download the current version of the dependency and make it compatible yourself with the new version of Sitecore. Or the nuclear option, just removing that dependency completely and implementing your own functionality similar to it, or some other way there. Don't recommend the final option, obviously. It's not something I would do. So updating the dependency yourself would likely be the path you have to take. So this kind of brings me to my main architectural recommendation that I want to get to with this presentation, and it's to lessen your reliance on third-party tools as much as possible. The less third-party dependencies you have, the less you have to deal with these issues that I just talked about. So it's just very important to note that third-party tools are out of your control. They can change drastically, thus making your upgrade process that much harder. So one particular third-party tool that I'm going to talk about here in the next slide is something that's involved in many solutions, and that's ORMs, and in particular, Glass Mapper. So upgrading ORMs, should you do it, or should you just rip it out? You can see my opinion here on the screen. In an ideal world, I think it would be a no-brainer to want to upgrade your ORM of choice, and it leaves all of your implementations intact. You don't have to go through and upgrade all of that as well. Like, you just upgrade your ORM and plug and play, and it's good to go. Also, in this ideal world, all solutions are architected well, thus making upgrading an ORM straightforward. Unfortunately, maybe I'm a pessimist. I don't think we're in an ideal world here. The newer version of the ORM may remove methods it previously supported, and your code base may require some serious updating to work around these now obsolete functions and classes. Upgrading your ORM can be extremely difficult. For example, the changes between Glass Mapper 4 and Glass Mapper 5 are significant. Glass Controller no longer exists in Glass Mapper 5. If all of your controllers are dependent upon using this controller, or even if you have other dependencies built upon using this controller, you'll need to find a workaround. Other changes, such as the removal of the isLazy decorator, could call for sweeping changes throughout your code, especially for components that require auto mapping of tons of child items. The point I'm trying to make here is that upgrading an ORM may not even be worth your time. Even after getting your code to successfully compile using the upgraded ORM, you'll then have to heavily test your sites, ensuring the site's behavior is still the same as before. Troubleshooting and diagnosing these issues, which may or may not even be attributed to your ORM at that point, you still don't know because you're in the middle of it. It can be quite difficult. In my opinion, this headache can be avoided by removing your solutions dependency on an ORM completely. Seems like a tall order. Yeah, it does. After all, it does require updating every component to get rid of its reliance on it. However, I would argue that once you get the development pattern down, it becomes very easy, mindless work to plow through. Doing so will make future upgrades. So don't think about just this upgrade, think about the future upgrader as well. It makes it so there's one less dependency that you have to worry about updating the next time. It also prevents having to wade through obscure ORM configuration issues. If the ORM upgrade is going to require a lot of code rewrite due to all those changes like obsolete functions and classes, why not simply just write the ORM out completely? So let's take a look at an example and see what it would be like to move from using an ORM to not using it. So a nice benefit of an ORM is that it allows you to map content authored data on an item to a strongly typed C# object very easily. In this snippet here, you can see that when I retrieve this data source item and I cast it to my sample glass object, title, text, and description are auto-populated. It's very simple, and I think that's something that's super elegant and very cool about glass and synthesis and whatnot. But let's take a look at what we can do without the ORM. All we would have to do is retrieve the values manually using the Sitecore API. You can assign those values to properties on the model to make your own strongly typed model. Very easy. Yes, this does require a lot of code rewrite, as you can see from the previous slide. I'll go back. Retrieving title, description, and text is super quick with one line. It does add more lines here. You do have to retrieve each one individually. It's mundane. It's busy work, that's for sure. Just plug in some music and have at it. In my opinion, I think it's just easier to do that than deal with ORM complexities. So as you're seeing here on the slide, it may seem like it's tough to replace ORMs, helper methods, and what it does to cast things. I just don't think so. You'll also see in CS/HTML files that GlassMapper provides helper methods to make fields editable. It's not hard to switch that over to using the Sitecore API. You can just use custom edit frames, you can use custom experience buttons, you can use Sitecore's HTML helpers. You can make your models properties be HTML string types, so you can just pass them to the view and it's already editable. An experience editor. Don't be scared. You may see glass littered throughout your solution. It's not too bad. So the last part of the upgrade process that I'm going to talk about is search provider changes. If you are keeping the same search provider, your code probably doesn't have to change much, if at all. All you'll have to do is stand up the newer version of the search provider that you're using and just hook it up. Code should work just fine. If you're changing search providers, this is where the work starts coming in. If you're going from Lucene to Solr, for example, you will need to write up your own Solr config files that are compatible with Solr that list out all the computed fields and whatnot that you're going to be using. Very similar to Lucene, but it has some nuance there. The good news is on the code side of things, if you're using the content search API, there should be minimal code changes there, even if you do change search providers. What you need to watch out for, though, if you are changing search providers, is to make sure that the new search provider in the version that you're going to supports all the features that you need. On one of my upgrades, the site required Chinese language support, and Lucene had this out of the box, but Solr 6.6.2 did not, so I had to implement that support myself in that particular language. Good news is if you're checking versions along to fact check, later versions of Solr do come out of the box with Chinese support, but a thing to consider. Also, actually, so I did say my main point of this presentation was to say to lessen your third-party dependencies. Scratch that. It's don't upgrade and change your search provider to Azure Search. Just don't. It's a pain. It will make your life a living hell. I think the complexities of Azure Search just make it not worth it. Complexities such as the 1,000 field limit and other things, they're just not fun. Stick with Solar or stick with Coveo or Search Stacks or however you're doing your search. Just don't do Azure Search. That's my slander for the day on Azure Search. So how long should an upgrade take? The path to upgrading your solution is very unique. So it's very hard to give a one-size-fits-all approach here. So hear me out, and there's some disclaimers as we go along. So listed here is how long each phase that we talked about will likely take, where one sprint is 2 weeks. The estimations here are for jumping major Sitecore versions on large code bases. At the beginning of an upgrade, you will want to spend 2 weeks or so making decisions on how you will do the upgrade. This investigation phase should include what dependencies you want to remove or upgrade, what your infrastructure will look like, things like that. You will also need to spend at least 2 sprints, I say, to set up your infrastructure and deal with the myriad of user access issues, whitelisting IPs, etc. Your investigation phase will determine whether you're retaining your current infrastructure, shifting to Azure PaaS, shifting to SaaS, or even moving to containerized environments. You will also want to have test users go into the site to find bugs once the upgraded solution is deployed. They will be crucial in finding incorrect behaviors for the new version of the site. This is super important for those who are coming into a solution that they don't know how it really functioned in the past. They don't know everything about the site and they're upgrading it. Having maybe an experienced user go in and test and find pain points will be good. If you're switching search providers for your solution, I would tack on another sprint or 2 into your timeline. So all in all, I would blanket support or suggest a 4-month period to have a completely successful upgrade with bugs ironed out. However, this may seem like an extreme case for other upgrades. Jumping smaller Sitecore versions with no significant code base changes can be completed in as little as 1 to 2 sprints. So like I said, there's no way to prescribe how long an upgrade will take without looking at what makes that solution unique. Some can take up to 4 months. Some can be as little as a month. That's why the investigation phase is so crucial. Usually you'll do an investigation and kind of let the client that you're working with know, or your own company, how much it's going to cost, how much man hours is it going to take. So with that being said, I wrote up a blog series on this, detailing each of these phases. It includes more details, more technical details on how to do some certain things, more tips. Also, if you go against my recommendation, totally fine, I get it. I wrote up a glass replacement controller. So if you go to Glass 5, you can just go to my blog and take that code and do that. As you can see, I myself kept glass in a solution that I upgraded. It ended up being easier in the end, but in most cases, I think it's not going to be easier. I think it's just so much easier to do the mundane and boring, makes future upgrades even easier. So that's my presentation, and I will turn it back to you guys.
Great presentation, Zach. So I think Maulik has a question. Maulik, you want to ask that?
Yeah, sure. So, like we have also recently, whenever upgraded to any Sitecore instances, we have removed the ORMs. Instead of that, we have introduced helper files. So that should be helpful, right? Instead of Sitecore item field dot value, what we create is we create a function that we will pass. This is the field. So in that function, it will always have some verification, like that field exists or not, that field has a null value, if not. So shouldn't that be helpful?
Am I on? No. Yeah. There's a lot. What I have seen in solutions that have gone without, they've gone to forego the ORM upgrade and they've used the Sitecore API. They've written a lot of extension methods to
Right.
take care of a lot of things for them that Glass or Synthesis did for them already. And I think those methods, in my opinion, are more maintainable because it's within your control.
Yeah.
So, and I guess to go back on the presentation, I don't want it to sound like I'm talking bad about Glass Mapper or something. That what they do is really good, and I was really gung-ho about just removing it from every solution moving forward until I was talking to Neil Shack. I believe he's maintaining it now, and he did have a good counterpoint that if the solution's well architected, it's very easy to do the upgrade. But if you're going into a solution that has some bad practice in it, it may be easier to rip it out. So that's why my blanket recommendation is to say, remove it. You don't have to worry about what the person did before you. You don't have to think about that. You don't have to try to think like them. But otherwise, if it is a very clean solution, keeping it is probably the way to go.
Right.
So I think this is not a upgrade only, right? I always felt uncomfortable using a third-party library or something, given the architecture of these libraries. Like, it's not like a API, headless API or something that you can call. It is tightly coupled to your solution. You have to compile things and all those things. And the thing that actually makes me uncomfortable is that, there are, if you remember, there are a lot of marketplace module out there. Before, we used to use Glassmapper is much bigger than that, but still, like, these modules has to actually keep up with Sitecore version, and that means that you are depending on another company, another establishment who is going to do that for you. So, I totally agree with you. Even not upgrade, but starting a project, you should actually weigh in, whether you want to take that route or not. And also, industry is going towards more of API first approach than this kind of solutioning. Glassmapper is a little different, so ORM, but I think this is a great point, although it came up from upgrade that you presented here.
Yeah, the like all of these modules that get put on the marketplace, they're really awesome. Like, these people did it on their own time to make other people's lives easier, and they even maintain it for free because they want to keep these modules available for people to use and make their lives easier. You never know if the person maintaining it has a major life event. Like, they have a kid or something. They don't have as much time to keep it with the latest version of Sitecore ready to go. So, and that's no offense to them. That's just that's life. That's open source code. So
yeah, definitely. Nice. Nice presentation and a lot of good tips. You have done like, upgrade. How the timeline is a little scary though, like 4 months. Like, what is your experience like, people?
So this is on the extreme side. I would say 4 months is extreme for sure, but I think it's a safe number. If I was going to be a betting man and I said I can guarantee you this will be done in 4 months with the bugs ironed out, then I would feel comfortable doing that. If I were to guarantee it in 2 months, but then there's a bunch of bugs, that's not done. Like you need all of the bugs ironed out. Something I failed to mention during the presentation is that upgrades should be focused on that word exclusively, upgrading. You are not trying to solve bugs that were pre-existing on the old version of Sitecore or bugs that were in the code that someone wrote. You need to get to the latest version, worry about fixing those bugs later. Unless if the bug is related to the upgrade itself, then obviously you have to upgrade it during the upgrade process. Does that address your comment? I think it's supposed to be like a safe number, and then you do an investigation, and then you work your way down.
Definitely. Is there any other question? I don't see anything on the chat.
I think what Zach said is very much right, that sometimes new things gets introduced. For example, everyone has used link manager. Sitecore modified that link manager's functionality in 9.3, and recently when my previous project, when we upgraded, it broke quite a lot of stuff. We literally had to hardcode a few stuff for the link manager to work. So that's some side effect of upgrades. Apart from that, many bad stories we have for upgrade, because I have been part of upgrades from like 6.2 to 6.3, then 6.4, all those. So
yeah, I think
a lot of stuff.
I think it's good to talk about them. Sorry, did I interrupt? Go ahead.
No. Just I was just saying that I was very much right saying that don't go crazy over upgrade when I introduce it, because I've been to that place many times.
Yeah, you'll find that especially if you're a consultant, you're coming in and you don't know the solution. So you don't know what was a bug previously. And then after the upgrade process, someone's testing it and they're like, this is a bug. And you're like, was this me? Or was this around forever? And then you have to go back to the old site that's live and try to make the same bug happen so you can prove your innocence. You can get stuck fixing bugs forever. So you really have to figure out what the baseline is to consider the upgrade process done. You need to scope it out and decide, okay, main functionality is there. We can move on and then fix bugs as we go. You gotta find out what's the acceptable tolerance there. And one final note also, the things I say here are based off the experiences I've done through my upgrades and what I will be doing in future upgrades. I didn't just form these opinions out of nothing. So if you have different experiences with your Sitecore upgrades, please let me know. I would definitely be interested to hear, to see if maybe that would shape my opinion and change the way I upgrade things. But yeah, I don't know where I was going with the end of that sentence, but that's where we're going to end it.
Good. All right. If there is no other question, Thanks to our speakers, Jack, Jason, and Rob. It was a awesome meetup so far. So I'll like to thank everyone who has joined in today's meetup, and we'll try to do this. We are thinking that we will try to do this every month, and we'll reach out to more speakers, and hopefully we'll present some excellent session like this in future. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for hosting.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.